topic that I think is quite a hot button for everybody in the US. Today, we are talking about home buyers afraid of the upcoming election. Dun dun dun. With interest rates still hovering between 6% and 6.5%, a lot of buyers are wondering, do I make the move now or do I wait until to see what the election brings? So let's also not forget that we are seeing quite the surplus of inventory with just over 14,000 homes on the market here in Austin. The opportunities are out there, but I think a lot of home buyers are still hesitating and have a bit of uncertainty. So, in this episode, we'll break down what this all means and what we are seeing in the market as realtors, as well as share our thoughts on how the election could impact the market and whether it's smarter to jump in right now or sit tight until after the election. So, with that, guys, let's begin. There's a lot to cover today. I
Right.
think personally, it's important to go over and share history so that way we can have an idea of like what the background was and compare to today's situation and scenario. Before we started the podcast, I'm going to
Podcast.
keep that. Yeah, before we started the podcast, we were talking a bit about real estate trends in the US just throughout the last election years. And I'm curious to see what you guys saw in 2020, November of 2020. What was the market doing? What were your clients doing? JJ?
Oh, that's a good question. I love that
Ian?
question.
Yeah, let's do it.
JJ, are you ready?
2020 election year. That was an election year.
It
I
was an
know
election year.
we're all locked up, locked down, right?
Not in
2020.
Texas.
Well, right. That's actually really important, and not in Texas.
Not in Texas.
Okay, so that was the last year of the last administration,
Yeah.
right? I
Mhm.
had a
Well,
long day. I'm kind of piecing this together.
I mean, technically,
Ian,
that
go.
was a turnover year,
Yeah.
right?
There was just so much going on. It was like I don't know, like racial tension. There was low interest rates. There was lockdown. Uh, And the 2 years after that, I mean, in Austin, the market exploded. Did that have anything to do with the election per se? Maybe. I think generally there's so many layers to it, right? There's like your situational thing and what policies affecting what. But at that time, it was low interest rates to me. Austin was hot and it just blew up.
Mhm.
Whether that was related to the new administration, not sure
I
exactly.
think I think that's what gets challenging is that people say things like, "Well, I remember when this president was in place and what real estate felt like and how great things were, whether it was unemployment and all of that." But um, we had so many factors and so many variables in there, such as this pandemic, such as all the tension, such as uh, any policies that were put in place before the transition of power. And
Yeah.
so it's really here's what I know. Here's what I know. I know that interest rates were low because everybody like banks were failing left and right. That's not a good thing,
Yeah.
right? It's not a good thing. Sure, interest rates were low, but then what businesses and corporations do is they're like, okay, well now because we know that there's this impending doom, we can start charging way more and do less work because everybody needs house and there needs houses and there's a scarcity mindset. And it's like, okay, that's not better, but I mean, it might be better for investors' pocketbooks. Books. It might be better for real estate agents' pocketbooks, but better for builders, better for title companies. But was it better for the industry? And was it better for Americans trying to buy homes like longer term? So that's really there's so like you said, there's so many layers to that. I do remember that it was chaos and it was there
Yeah,
was
that's what I remember the most.
unlimited source of buyers and sellers and everybody was felt like they were winning in the moment, but those are short
Mhm.
term goals, not long term strategies. Now
Yeah.
people that were relocating because they knew that this was the change that they wanted to make for their livelihoods or quality of life change, that's one thing. But people that were like, okay, well, I can sell a house, make way more money over here, relocate here, and then if something changes, I can just go back. Well, those are the people that get stuck. And
Yeah.
yeah, those are the people that get stuck. And I don't know that that's directly related to the federal politics, but it is absolutely attributed to that in the minds of so many people. They're like, oh, well, when it was this person, this is what it was like. It's like, yeah,
Right.
that's not how it was. Or not that there isn't, that's not the full truth, is what I want to say. You have to see all the layers. It's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard because as realtors, we're seeing things on ground zero. And when you look at it here in Austin, it's very different than it was everywhere else in the United States.
Yeah, that too.
What are you seeing? I mean, Daphne, I want you to answer your question. It's a really good question.
Yeah, 2020 packed a punch in a lot of different ways.
It's a lot to
Uh,
process when you think about 2020.
I love talking about 2020. I think it was a really interesting year. And I think looking back, it kind of set us up for the years that followed. So without, we'll eventually move past this history portion of it, but that was the last election year, right? So I think it is
Right,
important to acknowledge that.
for sure.
So it started off in Texas. I mean, the whole country shut down in March, and in Texas for like 3 days, realtors were not considered essential workers.
Yeah.
Maybe it was 2 days, maybe it was a week, I don't
It
know,
was
but
a
I was
short
ready.
amount of time.
It was a very short amount of time, and then all of a sudden we became essential workers, and our home prices were still really low compared to California and where so many other transplants come from. I remember you could get, I don't remember like the exact numbers, but you could still get a decent home central-ish north south for like 350,000, and your
Mm.
interest rate was going to be literally 2.5%. So yeah, people were flocking over. We had a decent market. We had low-ish inventory, but it wasn't scary, and people really still had a lot of options. So fast forward, we made it through the summer barely, and then we started sliding into like late autumn months when we had the election. There was a lot of tension, a ton of tension. But I think because Austin stayed open, a lot more open maybe than the entire country,
Yeah.
a lot of people were still coming here, and there were, I don't think it was so much political as it was just there's still opportunity in Texas. Ian.
Well, you said, okay, so a lot of people were coming here, but the political side of that is a lot of companies were coming here because they
That's
had
true.
less to worry about
That's
when
true.
it was referring to people working in and out of, their business running and their employees feeling a certain type of way.
There's a
I
couple things
It could have
actually.
just been timing too. You know
Yeah,
what?
like tax incentives fit into that.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Companies like tax incentives. But
Yeah.
then I'm thinking about what you said in regards to like what's open and not open, because that was color related in regards to red and blue.
What do you mean?
State, yeah, certain states were more open than others. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so people
Maybe it
can assign
wasn't.
that.
Yeah.
You,
So
you can assign that to what is perceived as a color. There's
yeah.
so many layers to that. I cannot stand, and yes, I'm saying this publicly, and I might get bashed for this, but I cannot stand someone who votes straight ticket without understanding what the policies of the people are that they're voting for, or what the particular nuances are that they're voting for. Because some people are so blind to any possibility of anything else being different from what they think they know, that it really just it puts us in a bad spot. Things
Mm-hmm.
are not black and white, obviously, and that I think that really is a detriment to our society. I think
Yeah.
we're a headline society and we don't dig a little bit deeper.
But
Yeah.
that's the political system. Like there's people
Yeah.
that attempt to do a third party, and they'll put hundreds of
Yeah.
millions
Oh, I
into it.
know. Oh, I know. I know. Okay, just real quick question, without saying who, it's just a yes or no, black and white. Uh, did you vote yet?
I haven't voted yet.
No, I did because my wife made me.
Good.
She's like, I mean, we did the whole thing where you had to read through and understand what policies were happening on each side, this and that, and then they have early voting. But um, yeah, it's that the reason why I brought that up is because the amount of people that showed up to vote was 3 times higher than I've seen it in the past.
Wow.
Good.
And this is early voting. There were so many people there. I was like, uh oh. This is going to be one for the ages, one
Yeah.
for the history books.
And policy wise, I'm thinking a lot of people appreciated how Texas as a state, and this could be a state thing, a state policy, as opposed to like federal, that it was more open. I think a lot of people, let's say, in my experience, just from my experiences, a lot of people from California felt like that wasn't fair how they were treated, and they liked the flexibility here.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw that too. Definitely. Well, the thing that was interesting about the election in 2020, so I've been licensed as a realtor in Austin since 2012. So I've seen several elections, and you guys have been in the game for quite a while too. And I remember when I first started in real estate, I think the first election year, I don't remember what year that was.
We're going to pull that up in a sec.
Okay. The
Yeah.
like older realtors that I talked with are like, oh, this is an election year. It's going to be dead. It's going to be dead. And that's the way it had been up until 2020. And that was the only election year that things were moving and grooving and we were still going. So fast forward now, which is what our podcast is actually about. Interest rates are higher, prices are higher, arguably twice as much as they were in 2020. What are your clients doing, saying, and what are you seeing? Whoever wants to take it away, go for it.
JJ, I already talked too much. Your turn.
I think generally there's the typical uncertainty that's there because they don't know who's going to get elected. And I think because of that, it makes someone, not sure. I think if we're to dig a little bit, it's like what policy is actually affecting your decisions, that's the general surface level reaction. Are you going to buy? Let me just see what happens after the elections.
I think it depends on, for me, who it is. If it is a first-time home buyer, they have a completely different reaction than if it's an investor. An investor that's used to 1031 exchanges and, cash reserves, that's a very different conversation than it is if somebody who's just trying to get their first house, for crying out loud. Those are very different people. And
Right.
the market for investors, man, right? I've had so many calls where people that are pragmatic about what's going on and have the resources to be able to do it are cleaning up. They're doing really well, because you have a lot of, unfortunately, in Austin, you have a lot of people that are kind of in that position where they're almost desperate sellers. And that's not everybody, but there is like you said, Daphne, we have over 12,000 active homes.
14.
Mhm.
13?
14,000.
14. Gosh, active. That's just insane. People
Wild.
a couple years ago, there were 3,000.
Yep.
And now we're sitting here with all this inventory. And I don't know that that's going to stay, but it's almost like this sea of opportunity that people aren't understanding. Now, again, that's if you have the resources. Maybe you have to use some sort of creative financing because that's out there. But then you have the first-time buyers who are like, I have no idea what to do. They can also leverage creative financing. Do they know that? I don't know. And now they have choices to buy homes where they didn't for the last 4 years. So it's, they don't have to go 100,000 over asking like we were doing.
Right.
So politically, I think everyone has an opportunity. They just need to know how to leverage it right now in Austin, anyway. I think the question is, does that change based on whoever ends up getting voted in? Will that shift it in either direction? Will we have a harder time getting people into houses, new people into houses, or will we have a harder time making sure the investors are placated?
That's a really good question. And I've wondered that too in my brain. I haven't said it out loud, but like, does it really matter who wins? I think people are just waiting for the election to pass, regardless of who steps into office. And once they are in and settled, home buyers are going to be out and about and shopping again, is what I think.
Oh, it's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the thing is, so Trump was in office in 2020 and the market in Austin, at least, was fine. It was doing really well. It was very healthy.
It was
Right.
beyond like it was erratic. Because healthy isn't 1 week and you have 30 offers. That's not healthy.
Well, that was 2020 though. I'm talking about 2020.
Sorry.
Okay.
So when I say healthy, I mean balanced. Like we weren't in a balanced market, but Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like people could still sell their home within a reasonable amount of time. Buyers could still buy something at a reasonable-ish price. And if there was another offer, it was like one or two offers, and it went 5,000 above the asking price. That's where we were. Okay, Trump administration up to 2020. 21,
Right.
Biden steps into office, and the market goes absolutely ham. And I don't think that either one is necessarily tied to Trump or Biden. I can say at no point did I have a client saying, like, I'm buying this house because Trump is in office, or I'm selling my house because Biden. No, it was situational market conditions. And I think people had maybe a little bit more confidence one way or another. But I personally never had a client say one or the other. Now, I will also say none of my clients are like particularly extreme or outspoken folks. So I'll leave that there.
I have
Yeah.
worked with
It's
the
tough.
most extreme on both sides because
Really?
I think when I first got into real estate, my mentor at the time, she goes, listen, real estate, I'm part of the green party, which is the money party. I can help as long as I can help you. I'm not, the politics shouldn't matter. So I was like, oh, that's a good way to look at it because you're just there to help people be people and accomplish their goals. I've had people, and this was in 2020, that we were shopping for houses or no, I was the listing agent on the side, and my clients had political signs in the garage. And when the buyers came in, we heard them on the camera because you can have cameras in your houses in case y'all don't know this, but they heard them over talking on the camera. And because of the political signs in their garage, they said, we don't want to buy this house because of these types of people. And I was like, that is the worst thing I've ever. First off, that makes zero sense because you're buying a house, they're leaving. Why would you let that be a factor in your decision? But anyways, that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah.
So especially like you were saying, JJ, about racial tension.
Yeah.
Even though it shouldn't have been. This is a house for your family.
I think it makes more sense maybe at that time too because things were so divisive.
Yes. Well, do you
So-
think that's happening again right now? Yes or no?
Yes.
I think it's always happening in different shapes
Yeah.
and forms.
Yeah.
Manifestation.
It's in a different level. It doesn't feel as spiteful as it did last time around, but there still is some residue from the previous.
It gets more sophisticated. I would say that it's just a thing. Yeah, I'm thinking about like the different administrations. Like it depends on the policy, and sometimes I think it's like a state thing. Like, is it in Texas being a super red state, right? I think that's historically accurate. I feel like we pull more from or being a red state as opposed to who's president. It's just like we get the red
Absolutely.
state thing.
100%. I'm with you on that. In fact, why don't we pull up the chart that you had earlier? What do you think of that?
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's look
Right.
historically at sales
And yeah,
activity.
Austin's always been kind of the blueberry city in a sea of red, right? And so what happens is a lot of the suburbs are actually teetering between red and blue, and so they're kind of purple suburbs, right? And so if you look at your Round Rocks, your Pflugervilles, your Westlakes, everything around Austin proper, you'll see that it's like 40, 60, 55, 45, that kind of voting ratio.
Can we look up who was president between 1980 and 1984?
Is that Reagan?
You could see that the sales went down.
Or that Carter?
Who's smart enough to know?
Ronald Reagan.
I'll say Reagan.
Ronald Reagan.
Okay, so 1980 to 84, it's kind of down and up. Oh, they colored it. Election year is blue. Year after election is green. Okay, I was trying to count.
Right, this is really good.
Oh, like right after. Okay.
Yep.
So election year 1980, dip that following year, but then you see it does eventually go up. Another election in 84 in the green. 1988, orange down. 92, green, 96 green, 2000 green, 2004 green, 2008
Mega.
green, 2012 green, 2016 green, 2020 green.
Look at the spike there in 2004. That is, I mean, that seems correct. That's
Oh,
wild.
I
Do you
know what's going
guys,
on there.
yeah,
I think. Well, more 2008 was when the market kind of crashed a little bit. Right here, the
yeah,
drop off. It
a
was
little bit.
yeah. That was the fake loan thing, the
Yeah.
subprime.
Yes,
Yeah.
the subprime lending spike.
Yeah. So in 2000, so my mother's been in real estate in Minnesota since like 1998. And I remember the early 2000s until about 2006, her birthday, her business was thriving. And 2000 to 2004, like it was on fire all the time. So that massive spike after the 2004 election, that feels very correct from what I remember.
So
I'm
there
sharing.
is 9 green arrows and 2 orange ones after election year.
I just shared in the chat from the White House when George W. was in office in 2008, and what they put in for home ownership, like what programs they did for home ownership, because 2008 was where it dropped, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, I think that's an important thing to look at too. To add in.
Wow, this is a really old website.
It's a government website.
Yeah,
Retro.
from 2008. Holy moly.
I was like, still 2008. Okay.
That is that
Yeah.
wow, that brings back memories.
It feels like an old website. Yes.
It really does.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Okay, so here's what's super interesting. If you look at a lot of the presidents over the years, all of them talk about how focused on home ownership they are. Not all of them, but most of them. Home ownership, the cost of goods, and then jobs. Like that's just a platform for all politics, right? Because that's what people care about. Many people care about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to see this particular one because of the line in here with right in the middle. See that line right in the middle? The decline in housing market has left many Americans concerned about losing their homes. Blah, 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 blah. Refinance, subprime lending.
You know, I think this is interesting that you would bring this up because I think we hear a lot about like I think this anyway. I could be wrong, but I think we hear a lot about the Obama administration and his housing policies because
Yes.
he came in right after the crash. So it's like that was their mess to clean up. Um, I haven't probably ignorantly haven't heard or seen of any housing programs or real estate incentive things from the Bush administration at all. Like I said, ignorant. Like it's not. I was.
Well,
Yeah.
and so think about like any transitional period, right? How long does it take for whatever the previous president did to impact the nation after the new president has switched over, right? So like from Bush to Obama, if Obama is becoming the president after Bush had he had 8 years, right? Did he have 8 years or did he have four spades?
He did have a.
Okay, so let's say he had the full 8 years, the full 8-year term. I know Obama had a full 8-year term, but in between that, how long does it take before whatever whatever Bush did to kind of fade away, right? So if Obama is being inherited something and a certain type of economy, then like that, I think that's what people aren't really paying attention to, because that same thing happened when Obama left and then Trump had his presidency,
Mhm.
right? Like
Yeah.
people aren't really diving into that. It's like some people hate the policies based on principle, but not based on what was happening in the world. Like there are so many people that I know that will vote 100% just because of a gun law. I was like, that has nothing to do with housing. That has nothing to
Mhm.
do with inflation. right? Like,
Yeah,
I
it's
just don't understand that.
I think you understand it, but if you're not educated enough, it's kind of a complex system.
It is a very complex system. I
And
think it's intended to be. I think there's a lot of
yeah. If it was that easy, I think we would probably be happier and trusting the government more. But in regards to these policies, I remember.
Whoa. Nobody
What's
trusts the government.
that?
I never said that.
That's straight. That's straight here.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So I remember when this was going down and Bush was dealing with it, there was a little finger pointing that the Clinton administration made it more accessible to buy a home, which also caused more of the subprime issue. Like,
Yes.
basically, it is very layered, and you have to like understand all the policies.
Well, right. So if they say, hey, we're going to make it easier for you to buy a home, you don't even need to check your credit. We'll just give you a home. What?
You don't have
That's
a job?
not the
Fine.
right answer. That's not
Yeah.
the right answer. But it was great and very lucrative for home builders, title companies, real estate agents. And then the entire American public was like, we can't stand real estate agents because they're taking advantage of us. Mortgage lenders are taking advantage of us. And all of us are like, you're the one that accepted this free loan. Where do you think that money's coming from?
Mm-hmm.
100%.
So does this signify anything? Like, could you call what's going to happen next year? Or is it just its own isolated events of things?
Does it look like it's a trend?
Yes.
That's a great question, Ian.
Right?
It looks like a trend to me, at least since the 70s.
This particular year, so we would be at 2024, actually looks like the 2004, where there was a big drop and spike down. And so this is most akin to like the 2008 line item, right? So a couple years of rapid decline and then a stabilization and then a slow rise.
It does look very much so. Hey, this one looks like this too.
It looks just like that. Yeah.
So maybe we'll get a little bump like that. I don't know.
Maybe. But you know what? I wonder. Okay, so let's look up what were interest rates in 2004. 1 second.
These are good. And the interest rate policies aren't, again, I'm not a politician here or like a political scientist, but the Fed is disconnected from the president's policy.
Yeah.
There might be some meetings, but the Fed determines.
Yeah, it's not the actual president saying, today our interest rates are X. No. Yeah. Okay, so here's what I got on the internet. And I hope this is true because everything on the internet is true. Okay, 2003, average interest rate was 5.83. And then it doesn't have 2004, but it does have 2005. And interest rates were around 5.87. So a smidge lower than they are today. But I think something that's important to keep in mind is that in 2003 and 2005, homes were like less than half the price that they are today. You could get a decent home in the suburbs for 180,000, 175 grand. Today, that same home would easily be about 500,000.
Right. But then it's how much are you making? What's the value of the dollar? There's so many more variables in there. I'm going to read. Obviously, this is just. Let me start by saying this. Like, none of us are promoting or disparaging any political party. We're just sharing what we think we know and how it should affect real estate. But also, I believe that we should be able to share and have conversations openly about how we feel in our opinions. And so
respectfully.
Yeah. So I'm going to read these comments as they're coming through. So JL says, live in our RV for 7 years in the desert to sacrifice and save for this moment in time. Just locked in. I'm assuming they just bought one. A new house in Las Vegas, Nevada. President Donald J. Trump, 2024. God bless America. So what's interesting about that is I bought an RV for whatever reason, because I always think, hey, if housing is ridiculous or if we have to adjust life and relocate for whatever reason, we have a conduit to be able to do that. So that's pretty interesting. I think a lot of people did that, especially in the last couple of years during the pandemic. RV prices, like that's actually RV prices actually coincide with home sales prices rising. It's really funny because a lot of people were buying them. Go
Do
ahead.
you think car prices go up with home value prices too? I feel like yes,
I
but
think
I
it's
don't
the
actually know.
opposite.
Really?
I think as home prices go up, car prices go down. I think because cars are almost a people buy nice cars to feel good and
Mm.
because they can go to work in anything. So I almost
Yep.
think it's like a commodity that they spend more money on when they have extra money.
Because I have limited experience with this, to be totally frank.
With what,
So,
cars?
just housing and cars. Because like the first several years of my career in real estate, I was starting, so I wasn't making much money. So I was like, I'll take any car that's affordable, right? But then once things started taking off, that's also when home values started appreciating, and then that's when I ended up buying a nicer car. So, and I remember in 2021 again, uh, home values when everything was inflated.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything was inflated. So,
I have a weird relationship with vehicles. I love cars and I also well, because I love cars, I like spending money on them. I've had lots of cars, lots of motorcycles, lots of vehicles. But with that, it's been over a decade since I've had any kind of car payment. And I feel like I have to do that in today's economy, right? Like I don't want to be in a situation where somebody comes knocking saying, "Hey, your car note's due," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I've got this, I've got this, I've got this," because it fluctuates, especially in our career, but just the economy today. I actually started doing that because of the economy. So I'm afraid of car payments.
I think in general, if we're talking about interest rates where they're at. I actually pulled up a historical chart here, and yes, they're actually lower than the average since 1971.
Yeah.
But the affordability and housing affordability is an issue, and
yeah.
Well,
there's
one
inflation
thing
in other things, goods.
one thing we haven't talked about, which I know I've got some clients that bring this up all the time. One in particular, he talks about the student debt. And
Hmm.
so like housing affordability, right? Like a lot of people are in college debt and because of that, can't really afford or haven't budgeted to be able to afford a new home in today's environment. And so with that, the college costs were not what they are today. And I think that's
Yeah.
impacting people's ability to buy homes.
Absolutely.
A huge one.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's I don't have kids, especially not college age kids, but I think there's starting to be a trend of maybe you don't need to go to college unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer.
Yeah.
Ian, seems like you have thoughts on that.
I want to hear what y'all have to say about that, other
That's
than
just what I've seen, but I
JJ went to
also
UT. JJ, how do you feel about your college and impact on your life and your ability to now have a career? That's that because this is important, right? Because the career is what we're all going for. You need a career before you can buy a house. Do you think college helped you with that?
Not inside the classroom. I'm
Oh,
too.
yep.
Uh, I think for selling real estate in Austin, it was good. I went to the University of Texas
yes.
because of my network. But I side with Daphne on the value. I think the value of a college degree statistically, I mean, it sounds like there's a whole bunch of debt, and it sounds like there should be more educated people out there, and there's an affordability issue. Like something's not
Dude.
adding up there to me.
Yep.
I would second that network thing. The amount of people, the amount of professors, the amount of people that have reached out to me because they knew me from college
Right.
has been a boon to my business. Now the question is, has it been an equilibrium? Have I made as much income from the relationships I've had from college? The answer is yes for me,
Right.
but I think that's completely based on the person and what they put into it. So that's the
Yeah.
first thing. The second thing is like I just had a client that reached out from Google Maps or YouTube or something like that, and they were going to rent a place on West Campus. And I said, well, let's go look. And as I was looking at the numbers, the rental prices for West Campus versus what it would be to just buy a condo it was ridiculous. It's like, so I had that conversation. Why wouldn't you just consider? Would you at least consider buying it? And so now we're in a wonderful situation where their second daughter is going to be there for multiple years. They have a cousin that might be coming next year. And so we're closing on a condo right there. It only makes perfect sense. And we got a sweet deal because people are just trying to move on with their lives.
Yep.
So it's like win, win, win. I don't see what's wrong. And that is, it's indirectly related to college, but it's because of college that adds another one of those wins.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the themes that are coming out is like, what policy affects income production, affordability, because that's essentially going to help with housing. Like you're either in it or not, or, you have to, or you're going to be a renter or a landlord. Like these are the things you have to kind of figure out what the play is.
So in this particular scenario, when this young woman graduates from college, and I understand this might be a particular circumstance where her family is able to help her get into this place. But when she graduates from college, the amount of money that this home will be worth will be greater than what she paid to get into this college.
Hopefully.
No. In Austin, even if it's of the mindset of the whole time she was investing it into something of hers and not sending it to rent to someone else. Mm-hmm. Even if it's just that much, and she breaks even when she goes to sell it, she still saved that much.
Sure.
What area of town is it?
It is
UT.
West Campus directly. Like
West Campus?
Yeah.
That's a fun place to live. If you can find like a decent place over there, I think that would be a really fun place to live.
There were so many. Many. And so like investors, people that are thinking about, there's no HOAs, there's always revolving rent. It's like a what do you call it? Like there's a military base.
Like a condo with no HOA? Or is it like a house?
I'm sorry. It is a condo with an HOA, low HOAs.
Oh, okay. Because I've seen that. Okay, no, I've seen that. Yeah. I was like, wow.
But there were some of the places we were looking at, there were freestanding homes with no HOA in that same little subsection.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? I mean, you have to deal with the frat houses right across the street, but that's fine. And the sororities. That's fine.
That's part of it. That's part of it.
You want to feel alive. Live across from one of those.
I think that'd be super fun.
I think it'd be a lot.
It was. I lived there in my 20s. It was super fun.
Okay, all right. So we're losing people on our live stream. So we got to get back into whatever our topic was.
Okay, we're talking about our buyers afraid of the election or afraid to buy before the election.
I think it's so like micro. It's hard to zoom out. Like it's easier to see that the campus, like that block at the University of Texas, has a certain economy to it, the students, and like, does the president affect that?
No.
Well, sort of. So here's the question. I know that Kamala Harris had talked about a particular type of home buying program. So let's focus on that. Do we think that particular policy, do we think that is a benefit to the Austin public, the Austin area public?
Like which one? Like more building, like buying?
It wasn't the buildings. So the buildings, Austin is talking about zoning, right? So both Trump and Kamala have two different policies. I believe Trump, one of his policies was reduce the number of foreign investors. So I think that was one. And I believe that Kamala's policy was related to providing X amount of income or in the form of a grant to people that were looking to buy their first home. So one is great for investors. One is could be great for first-time home buyers. Neither one of them talked about how that impacts people long-term, right? Or what the dollar values are.
Well, I'd be curious. I think we talked about this too in the previous. We had done a podcast about like the different policies per party, And my biggest question is always like, if there is a grant, who's actually paying for that? Is that us? Like, do our
Always.
taxes go up? Right. So,
Right. Well,
like,
that's
who
the
really
thing.
wins?
Anytime somebody says we're going to give you, anytime the government says we're going to give you something, that means we're paying for it.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's got to
Yeah.
pay for it. And so I
Absolutely.
actually just pulled this up. So with Kamala Harris, her plan was to build 3 million homes in 4 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's say that she's going to build all these homes, or that her administration is going to focus on building these homes.
I think she could get through the red tape of the local zone.
Where is the money coming from? And then if the money isn't coming directly from a grant from the government, they still have to provide incentives to the builders or to the cities and states to make this happen. So it still comes from money. And then what does that do to our national debt? Right?
Yeah.
Like, these are the things that are really, really critical that you want to break down. And then what does that do for the prices? Because so if you're building 3 million more homes, you would think that it actually lowers the prices of homes. Do we think that's true?
It should. More supply.
But if we're spending a lot of money to do it, well, that's actually deflating the value of the money.
Well, I think there's a housing shortage still. So there's so many things involved in this.
Yeah.
So okay, let's say Ian, in the last podcast that you did like this, you broke it down. You said like 3 million, 50 states, and then we kind of broke it down by city, and you had some decent numbers. Oh, somebody's got a comment.
Yep. Read John's.
Okay, forget whether we should buy a house or not. I'm seriously considering leaving the country with who will be leading our country. Oh boy. Curious to know where John wants to go.
That is the right question. I am curious to know where, because I've been to a lot of countries. Daphne, you travel. You're well traveled.
Yeah.
Like, have you found a place that you would rather live permanently for more than, let's say, 4 years?
Oy.
Outside of the United States?
We're so spoiled in the US, right? Like, I don't.
Well, that's why I said more than 4 years.
Yeah,
like, it's
exactly.
one thing to go for 6 months. I'll do that all day long.
Yeah. Even for 6 months, there's a lot of nonsense in other countries that we don't have to deal with here. Like, my family is from Peru. I have a very comfortable setup there. And there's like nonsense things that I just, as an American, just gets under my skin that I'm like, I can't deal with this for more than another week. So, no, to answer your question.
I've been to Canada 3 times this year. And most people will be like, why? I was like, it's beautiful. It is.
You've got events. Yeah.
Gorgeous. Yeah. So I went to Banff, and I remember reading, like, what are the laws? What are the things you can or can't bring? I carry a pocket knife and pretty much everywhere I go. And in Canada, they were talking about, they've got moose, they've got bears, they've got wolves and all this sort of stuff. And I like hiking, and I like nature, and I like being out. And while I would never want to harm anything like that, if I'm being attacked by something that's 9 times my size, they have 10 freaking knives on their hands. I need to do something. And in Canada, you're not allowed to have an assisted blade knife.
Really?
And I said, well, what am I supposed to do if I'm being chased by something? They're like, spray it. Bear spray. I was like, you are messing with me. For real, bear spray? I can't even.
Sounds like hairspray.
Believe that.
The bear will come out with some.
He comes out with a big one.
Believe it.
That's wild.
Okay. So what about you? What about you? Did you never answered that? Like, where would you like to be?
I don't think she'd go anywhere.
John has another one.
Oh, John says South Korea and Japan are really nice if you have money.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Their economy is struggling a little bit too, at least in Japan. And their fertility rates are super low. And so they actually have a lot of interesting incentives in that regard too. They're paying people to go over there and listen. Let me take a step back. This is what I'm seeing on the internet. I haven't been to Japan for a few years.
It's true.
Okay, I was going to say I haven't been to Japan for a few years. But that's the same thing in the United States. There are a lot of issues with fertility here too. And I'm not saying you need to be for or against anything like that, but Japan is doing everything they can to get people over there because they have extremely low housing. They have vacant houses from what I'm seeing, and they have these declining birth rates. So maybe money was the thing that you needed to have. I mean, maybe it still is, but I think there are a lot of other things to consider if moving to a place like Japan or Korea. I don't know much about the lifestyle in Korea.
Now, if
I'd like to
it,
see what John S. does because
yeah,
I
me
hear this a
too.
lot, but I don't know if anybody actually, you hear it a lot, but do
So
people actually move after the election?
I have a buddy who was Air Force, and as soon as he turned 18, he went to Japan, and he lived between Japan and Korea, and he ended up retiring, but he loved it. He loved it. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, "You don't understand that the government is stealing your freedoms right from under your nose, and I'm more free here than you'll ever be." And it took me a long time to understand what the heck he even meant, but I pay attention to that kind of stuff. And freedom is not, how would I say this? It's not what most people think. I don't think it's what most people think. I think just being able to do certain things, being able to even pull money out of the bank. I saw that as a conversation today. Have you ever tried pulling $10,000 out of the cash out of the bank? You can't do it without calling ahead half the time.
It's a whole thing. Yeah,
it's a whole thing. It's like, what? It's my money. Right. And so
is it?
Well, right. So going back to the policies, if you're trying to buy a house, like if you're trying to buy a house right now and you have $20,000 under your pillow, which I have a buddy that's like that. He has so much cash sitting in his closet and under his bed and just like hiding all over the place. You can't. You have to like funnel it through the system or find ways around it.
Yeah. I'm curious, JJ, where would you go if you could go elsewhere?
I don't know. I'm from I mean, my parents immigrated from the Philippines. I was born and raised here. The dollar stretches, but there is a cost because it's still it's very nice, has very beautiful beaches. It's still a third world country.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm thinking Hawaii for some reason, but that's still in the U.S.
Yeah,
It's still
I
very-
can't stand Hawaii. You want to talk about inflation? Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
Hawaii is
Yeah.
the worst. I do Costa Rica all day, and I do Colombia. I'm actually talking about buying a house in Colombia.
Yeah?
When I go
What
there
part
in
of
2 weeks.
Colombia?
We'll talk about that in a sec. You got to read John's thing.
Okay, John says, of course I was being facetious. I just have to stop watching the news after the election and watched you guys a lot more. Haha. That's me inserting the haha. You will need to churn out more content for us.
We're working on it. We're working on
for
it,
real.
man.
Yeah. I think we all say facetiously, especially if you're not from the US or like have roots elsewhere. We've all said like, God, I'm getting the hell out of here. And like we never follow through. Yeah.
Well, so think about that in terms of people that you grew up with that said, "Oh, I can't stand it here. I'm going to move. I want to get out of this town." That's the story as old as time right there, right? Like,
yes, absolutely.
did you have that? You had that growing up, right? I know you did.
Yeah. Yeah, we all did.
Yeah, but we did it.
We left. Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And a lot of people that watch our channels did it.
I think so too. Just by the nature of who we are, that's who is going to end up watching. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
So you were asking about Colombia. Colombia is an insulated place where if the world were to go to crap, let's say there was a zombie breakout or whatever, Colombia, it can handle all of its own. It has its own economy, kind of like Texas has its own economy, and it could be self-sustained, broken off from the rest of the world and not have any issues. You'd have fresh fruit, water, all of that. There is a question of corruption. There is everywhere. That's the other thing.
It's a statement. It's a statement
everywhere you go. But Colombia, it's beautiful. It's a temperate climate because it's just above the equator. Most people speak English and Spanish. You're not allowed to have firearms, which, that's especially after the whole drug cartel thing. Yeah, I know,
like,
right?
I feel like there's
so many
exceptions.
Beautiful mountains surrounding you. Have you ever seen the show Vikings? You ever seen that show?
Not the show I was expecting you to say in reference to Colombia.
There was a city they talk about on that show, and it was Kattegat. And whenever you see Kattegat, that's actually how I envisioned when I was in Colombia, standing on top of where Pablo Escobar's mansion was, and I looked out. It looked just like Kattegat, except it was a little more what do you call it?
Tropical?
Pollution in the air.
Oh.
A little more smog in the air and a little less water directly in front of you. But it was beautiful. Close access to ocean, all that sort of stuff. Best pineapple and fresh fruit you'll ever have. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah. The fresh food in Latin America just hits different.
It does. It does.
Just hits different.
Have y'all looked into the environmental food policies by
No.
the
Oh, where?
Wrong
In the United
podcast.
States? In other countries?
US? Well, I saw Trump on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Oh, I
and
haven't watched that. Don't spoil it for me. Actually, spoil it. Go ahead.
Spoil
this is actually really
it.
important.
There's an spoiler alert. There's an
Yes.
environmental theme, and Trump just thinks there's too much red tape regarding environmental.
That's an interesting. Ooh, that's an.
And he had a lot of examples because he develops buildings. You know, he's like, I develop a lot of buildings in New York City, and there's just like,
Is that your impersonation?
That was. It's always the little hands.
yeah, the hands. And you know, he just thinks there's too much out there in regards to policies and
Who's the red tape for?
developers, builders.
Do you have an answer, Ian, or are you asking because you're curious?
I'm both. Yes, I always play devil's advocate because I think when you hear stuff like this, especially when it comes to sensationalized podcasts or truth bearing, but we don't actually know the depth behind the things that people are saying. Podcasts like that, there's a lot to it. So
yeah,
I know we have a lot of people that are doing things in the United States that if they can get away with it, they don't care. They don't necessarily care how it impacts people or the environment or anything like that.
Yeah,
and so when we go to places, like you said, Daphne, Central American fruit hits different. American fruit, I mean, there's
Doesn't
a reason
hit.
for that. And we're highly regulated.
Yeah.
So
We are highly regulated.
So that's why I'm asking that. Like, who is that for? Who does that protect?
Well, the thing that comes to mind, this is just me guessing and speculating, but it's like in New York, I know Trump's shit. A lot of Trump's development has been in New York, and I know he's developed stuff elsewhere, Florida,
Right.
etc. But I know in New York, like everything, land space is so incredibly limited.
Mhm.
It's one very, very expensive, and I think the city just has the right, they've created their own right to make it extremely difficult to develop anything. Difficult.
That's
and
city stuff too,
expensive.
right? Like again,
What?
there's so many. There's city ordinances, so there's so many layers to the policies. It's a hard read. You have to kind of.
Yeah.
I think what I'm gathering.
Do we want developers and builders to have carte blanche here in the not the United States, here in Austin, Texas area to be able
Which
to
is in the
build?
US.
Sure, but we're focused on Austin, right? Like the Austin area, to be able to build whatever quality home they want with whatever materials they want with zero scrutiny. Or should there be regulation around that?
And this is still
to make it more affordable for the end consumer.
And this is still a city permitting policy. Yeah, and since we're talking about elections, it's still a city policy, right? Like they have to pass the permit still. So there's that, but
that's an interesting point because we do have all these permits, and I think I'm going to use air quotes, permits and regulations that builders are really proud of when you're building a new home in Austin, and I think probably anywhere, but they're like, oh, we have to go through this, 37-point inspection from the city. I just made up that number.
Yeah.
Yet at certain price points, we're still seeing absolute crap quality construction. So are there regulations in place? Yeah, but I think a lot of builders are just meeting the bare minimum. So it's like we need at least that.
So you're asking, should we develop more?
No. The plan is we need more houses. That's not a question, right?
Right.
Austin's in a kind of a little weird spot right now, but in general, across the United States, housing is something that people need. I would rather more people, this is me now. I would rather more people be able to purchase a single family home or something that's an investment vehicle for themselves and their family and their legacy that will continue to appreciate over time than to have to rent because they have no other choice.
Right.
So with that being said, should we just build clay huts, or should there be a certain level of quality that gets them past, I don't know, tornadoes that might show up in Gerald?
Yeah, I do.
Or
I mean, I
crazy
do.
summer hailstorms with baseball size hail. Like, that's the kind of stuff that happens here. We're not in Houston, so we don't have to worry about hurricanes and stuff, but we still have to worry about some things. The extreme heat. Should there be something in place for that? Like, those are the things that I think the builders should be focusing on here.
Yeah,
personally.
I think there should be. Will there be? I think what's interesting about development is builders, the sales you could get in and out, and then you're not necessarily responsible for the way that was developed, right? Like a builder could build 200 houses, make a neighborhood, whatever quality, they're done. It's a done deal. There's
They're
no
out.
accountability with whatever happens there after that. There's some warranties and that's it.
Yeah, but half of them, like, how many builders went out of business over the last 2 years or over the last year? Like, I know that there were multiple that went out of business, and so they had home warranties that they're supposed to honor, but now it's no longer their business, so they don't have to even honor it. I was like, oh, that sucks for my people that bought these houses. None of us would have known that. I guess we need to start studying P&L. That's a good reason to go to college, huh? Unless you can just find out how to do it on YouTube and
You can.
Yeah.
You absolutely can.
Yeah,
College
you're
should
right.
see a bunch of YouTube screens and somebody like teaching people what they want. Okay. John S., where is the origin of the term red tape? Why is the tape red? Funny face, meaning
Funny
maybe
face.
a blue group was like, yo, that's red. But I think it's like an alarm, right? Like hot.
Well, red is easy to see.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
As a contrasting color. But I want to hear what Daphne found.
I found
what is
a real, yeah. The term red tape originated from the historical practice of using red or pink ribbons to bind official documents. This tradition dates back to at least the 16th century, particularly in Spain and England.
So we took that from Europe too?
Okay, and then over time, the term red tape took to a negative connotation, symbolizing excessive bureaucracy and regulations that slowed down administrative processes. It becomes a metaphor for needless delays caused by overcomplicating rules and procedures, blah, 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 blah.
So we left a monarchy because we wanted more freedom, and we started our own country, and they were like, yeah, but that was good. We're gonna use that. We're gonna use that red tape.
We're gonna keep doing that.
Yeah, it should be like labeled
and feet. We're gonna use feet instead of
in the metric system,
measure stuff. Yeah, it's like, what? Why those two things? Anyway,
the tape should be more specific so we know what exactly is holding something back. Is it blue tape or red tape?
Is that a strange euphemism? I have no idea what you're saying about
what's the reason that this is the tape that's holding this back? I think that gets blurry.
All right, I think
because you can get down. Okay.
Yeah, I think we've been on this podcast too long. We were getting delirious.
Well, you asked me why it's red, and then we're talking about politics, and I'm like,
Ian's obviously tired. I'm cold. I don't know what's going on with JJ.
Listen, I was riding dune buggies in Vegas last week, where, ironically enough, as I was leaving Vegas, traffic was ridiculous because Trump was leaving Vegas, and guess where he was flying? Austin. I'm like, how? How does that happen? Where
was he on your flight?
No, hey, that'd be funny. Yeah. He can no longer afford his own plane, his own jet. No, he had his own jet. He can't carry weapons. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
I know.
Anyway, final thoughts. Daphne, you're the leader here.
I don't know. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think in general, people are waiting until after the election to make any sort of a move. I think buyers and sellers, the seller clients that I've had come up to me in the last couple of weeks or couple months, I've been telling them, let's hold off until spring, not just because it's an election year, but simply because it is the winter months. And that is a generally a crap time to try to sell a home. I think people will have more confidence in the economy regardless of what happens, just knowing that the dust has settled, and we're probably going to see consumer confidence go up. I don't know that by a lot, but it probably will go up a little bit. That's my thought.
Love it.
I agree with you.
Cool.
Is that it? That's your whole quote? You agree with-
That's it. JJ.
I would say if someone's evaluating whether or not they can buy a home, obviously think to yourself, is this beneficial for you and your life and your family and whatever your plan is, your legacy? But the question I would have you kind of ponder for yourself is, of the last 10 major decisions in your life, has waiting improved that decision? For whatever it is, whether it's, I'm going to say asking someone out or going to school or this decision to have kids or whatever it is, adopting a puppy. I don't know. Like, has waiting improved the scenario for you? And then ask that same question of, do you think that's the case for housing? Because right now we have so much available inventory, which means you have all of these choices. Now, if you're a seller, it's a different question. But if you're a buyer, you have so many choices out there. Do you think prices or taxes will be cheaper in the future?
No.
That's it. I'm out. I'm done.
Cool. Things to think about. Thank you, guys. I think that wraps up this episode of the Real Estate Lab.
Heck yeah. Thank you,
Thanks for
everybody.
tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
See you in the next one.